Hello class. In this video we start to introduce using JavaScript in a browser instead of running it directly on a console emulator. So we're going to have a little bit of differences in syntax here and where we can see output. Most notably, the console is radically different than what we would see on a desktop version versus a web view. And the place where we place the JavaScript is going to be a little different. So let's take a look at some examples of that and get you started. This way you can start looking at console output and use that for debugging purposes. So we start with our initial JavaScript sandbox, and this is the one that we've used before, where it does a simple statement. I'm just going to refresh it here real quick. Where we do a simple statement, we log it to the console. And there's really nothing fancy here. It's a simple variable assignment and a couple of console logs. And as you can see, when we run it down on our console, it prints out the output. And that works great. That works great for a desktop version. It does not work so well for a web browser. You do not want to see log messages printed on your web page. You may want to see that information, but you certainly don't want it to be displayed on your web page for others to see. So it's more of a diagnostic tool, as it should be, console logging. So we have in section 9.2 of our book, we have a different kind of demonstration. This is a JavaScript in the browser sandbox. It's a little bit different. So you see, we'll start out with just a basic HTML page. And it really doesn't do anything fancy. It's got a head, it's got a body, it's got a H1 tag, it's got a paragraph, it's got some text. Again, nothing fancy at all. And if we run it, we'll see down in our web view what the web page looks like. Now we can expand this to a larger tab if we wanted to. And unfortunately it's getting cut off by the recording tool, so let me pull that out so we can take a look at that in a little more detail. So we'll kind of leave that there. Okay, so again, here's our web page, and that works great. But we don't have any console logging. Maybe we want to put some console logging in. Maybe we're doing some development and we're not sure what's happening, or we want to leave it in there so if there are errors we can investigate later. So I'm just going to go back to our very simple output here. I'm just going to copy all 3 lines of code as is, and we are going to put them into our HTML page. Now, let's give us a room to type here. We certainly can't just put in JavaScript like that, because what it's going to do, as you can see when it renders the page, it's rendering it as text, because that's what HTML sees. HTML sees text. It doesn't know it's JavaScript. Well, that's where we can use the script tag. And now we're telling our browser that what follows inside the script tag is JavaScript code and should be executed as JavaScript. And we'll close out the tag. And as the web page renders, it looks the same as it did before. We see the paragraph, we see the heading, we don't see any console output. So intuitively, you would think, okay, well, let me click on the console. And it does not display the output like we thought it would, similar to what we have in the other sandbox where it would display the output. Well, this is where we have to do a little bit more, be a little bit different here. So we go back to Web View, and what we're going to click on now is this DevTools button. And DevTools, and we'll look into DevTools as we go on, it's not displaying anything. Let me refresh the page. Get that restarted, and then we'll try DevTools again. We'll run our page. Oh, we don't need this JavaScript function. We'll look at that function in a minute. Let's run this page. And sure enough, there it is. Let's try DevTools, and there's our DevTools now. So it opens up a whole nother window. And this is something that you would see similar in the web browsers, and we'll take a look at that in just a minute. But you could see here in our console, we have our output. So we can see our logging, we can see our output, we can see our console messages, and it does not affect the web page itself. You can see here's the web page right behind it. Sidebooks is a little funky when it comes to scrolling around, so I apologize for the display jumping around. But you could see here's our console output here. Now we have the ability to put our console logging or messages or debugging in there and not affect how the web page is rendered. Now, if we have expanded our web page again to a new tab, and we'll do that now. Oh, I got to move it down again so you could see it. There it is. Let's make this bigger. And it's the same output, but you see this little, like a little tools glyph here. If you click on it, oh, we get our console again. So now you have a full screen version of the same output. And in addition to the console, you can see information, if there's any information, any warnings, or any errors. So if you have an error in your JavaScript, it would certainly show up here. It will not show up here unless it breaks the HTML. So you have now the ability to use the console in a web browser. Okay, so I'm going to close this down. We don't need this right now. What I do want to show you, and I did take this code and it exists separately in another file on my laptop. And what I'm going to do is open it in its own Chrome tab. And it should open, there it is. Kind of looks the same as it did before, and again I'll make it fit so we could see it. And this is now in Chrome. So you notice there's no glyph down here, so we can't get to that console that way. But what we can do is we can do a right click and we can do inspect. And inspect will bring up another window, and it's resizable, so you can move things around if you'd like. And you could see here is our HTML. As we hover over things, we can expand it, and we can see our full HTML, so we can see our entire web page, which is kind of neat. And more importantly, what I wanted to demonstrate is here's our console, and there is our text from the console, from our JavaScript in the HTML, and it even shows you what line number it was on in the HTML file. So you can now inspect a web page. You can see where items are. You can get the console output, and you can do that in Chrome. What's also neat is, and this probably looks familiar to you from the borders in the CSS, so it kind of gives you an idea of what things look like. You can click this little icon over here, and you can have it identify where in your HTML this different code is, in case you have a big file and you're trying to find something. This will help you narrow it down. And it gives you some of the accessibility information. It gives you some of the coloring and the CSS information about it. Even though there is no CSS in here, it does show you the size of the box. It shows you the colors. It shows you the fonts. It shows you the margins. So you can now use that to base your decisions and make any necessary changes. Now let me close this down, and I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to open that same file with Microsoft Edge this time. So let me do that for you and show you the difference. And I'm waiting for the program to open on my laptop, which is super slow today. Here it is. I'll drag it over. And you can see it looks pretty much the same. And we can right click and we can inspect. And yes, it looks a little different in the Microsoft version and the Chrome version, but essentially you see here's your CSS and your styling down below. Here's the box. Here's your code. Here's where you can pick and choose to see the different elements and the styling and where in the HTML it is. But what we want to know is, where's the console? Well, it's this little guy right here. It looks like a command tool window. You click on console, and again, here's our output. Looks very, very similar to what Chrome displayed, so that's super handy. So if you have a favorite browser, you can get to the same output either way. I guess just for completeness, I'll close that down. We can do the same thing with Firefox, because that's the only other browser I have. So let me load up Firefox. Let's see if that loads while we're waiting. Still loading. There it is. Bring it over. And you see, there it is. Same basic display. Right click. You have less menu options this time, but you still have inspect. So we can do our inspect, and it puts it down at the bottom, and we can see our code. We can navigate and click and highlight again with the code inspector. And again, we have console, and again, our output, again, with the same error warnings, logs, info, etc., the same file locations, the same output. So you have your choice of browsers, pick your favorite, and you can still get the same development information. Okay, so that was just a quick little video to show you how we can use the console for output in the web browser versus the desktop version. I will next go into the document object model in another video. It's going to be a little bit longer, so I want to keep them separate, but let's start with this, and see you in the next one.